Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. For today's video, I will be discussing your unpopular bookish opinions. So I asked you guys on Instagram and on the community tab here on YouTube to send me your unpopular bookish opinions, and I am going to discuss them and say whether I agree or disagree with your opinion. I just want to say, obviously, I respect everybody's opinion and feelings and all of that. And if I disagree, it's nothing against you, obviously. Like, it's kind of just a discussion really about things. Thank you so much to all of you who sent in your opinions. I really appreciate it. You guys had some really good ones that I am excited to discuss. The first one is, I'm so sick of covers without people. It makes me stay away from their books. I kind of agree. Like, I am sick of the whole like illustrated cartoon cover vibes for romances. I just think it's so repetitive, so confusing, because it's like, how can you tell if it's a romance or if it's just like a contemporary or like a woman's fiction? Like, how are you supposed to differentiate all of them? Even with YA, like, how are you supposed to tell it's YA? I can name 10 dark romance masterminds in 1 second, and none of them would be H.D. Carlton. Extremely overrated. This one is very interesting because I have seen so much love for this author everywhere. I tried to read Haunting Adeline, I think is that first book in the duet. I think I maybe got 20 to 30% into it, and then I ended up putting it down. There was part of me that was enjoying the book, but also part of me that wasn't. And there was like one sex scene that grossed me out, not in the way that it made me like uncomfortable. It was just like gross and like not sanitary. And it weirded me out in that way. So I can't really agree or disagree with this one because I haven't fully read a book by H.D. Carlton, but I definitely think there are so many great dark romance authors out there who actually can write and like have a great dark element that isn't necessarily for shock value. Yeah, this one was very interesting because I've only ever seen love for this author with dark romances. I am so sick of Valentine PR. They always approve me and now hardly ever. They also have all of my favorite authors now that Social Butterfly PR is gone, and it's so frustrating. I didn't even realize that Social Butterfly PR was gone. I don't really request very many arcs anymore, so I guess that's why I didn't notice. I think early on in my booktube career, I guess, I wanted to read a lot of arcs and review them and stuff. I mainly just would review them in like wrap-ups and everything. And I had requested a book, I think it was from Valentine PR. I got approved, and this was like maybe 3-4 years ago. And I can't even remember what book it was for, but I don't know if they still do this, but when I request an arc, they had you pick a review date so that you could post your review on that day. And if you didn't, you would have to give a reason why you couldn't put your review up. Like, if the date came and went and you didn't have your review up and you didn't like give them the link, you had to give like a valid reason as to why you weren't able to do your review on time, which, you know, makes perfect sense. You are getting this free book. The least you could do is put up a review, right? Like, I totally understand that, but I think what really rubbed me the wrong way is that like you had to pick a day and then you had to give an excuse why you couldn't put up your review. You know, I've worked with other publishing companies that didn't ask for a date for you to like have your review up. They were just like, here's this arc, read it, talk about it, like whatever. They didn't ask for a specific video or like a date to have it read by. And those are like big publishers. And like I said, obviously it's in exchange for a free book, but I don't know. I just feel like there should be more incentive. And I guess it is your fault because you are requesting the book, so you should have your review up. And that's what happened, is I didn't put out my review in time and I didn't give a reason why. I just kind of ignored it because I was like, I'll get to the book when I get to it. And they never let me request another arc ever. I think they keep a list of people who don't put up their reviews and then they automatically deny those people for arcs. And like, also I have a feeling that if you give a book a really low rating from your review, they probably won't approve you for any more arcs either. So I'm wondering if this is what happened to you. Maybe you gave a book a really low rating in your review or something, and that's why they don't preview anymore. I learned that I'm not a reviewer and I don't want to request ARCs anymore. I usually deny them or I just don't respond. I'm just not a reviewer. I don't want to review things aside from my wrap-ups, and that's the extent of me reviewing books. When booksellers use a Sharpie to make a line or dot at the top or bottom of the book, like Book Depository does, like why? If there are booksellers watching this video and you have a reason, please let us know. I honestly don't know why they do this. I thought that they did this for like discounted books, but I have seen it on like full regular priced like brand new books. I wonder if it's them like counting their inventory and that's how they do that. I don't know if that makes sense, but that is interesting. I don't like that, obviously, but I mean, there's nothing really you can do about that. These next two are Colleen Hoover related. The first one is, I actually enjoy Colleen Hoover's books. I know she's not the best person, but I can't help but love her books. I'm no longer reading Colleen Hoover. I haven't read her books in years, to be honest. The books of hers that I have read, I've liked a majority of them. Like Ugly Love and It Ends With Us are my favorite Colleen Hoover books, but I also did read those years ago when they actually came out. And so I don't know if I'd feel the same way now anyways. I think it's difficult because there are some authors who are very problematic who I do not want to read from. And then there are some authors that are problematic and I still read from. I'm definitely very wishy-washy with who I choose to read from and who I choose not to read from. So I definitely cannot judge you on this one. But I mean, read whatever you want to read, to be honest. I think there are definitely better authors out there that you can read and who have just as good books, if not better, but that is ultimately up to you. I actually don't mind the casting for It Ends With Us movie as long as they get the message across correctly. This I kind of disagree with. I do not like the casting. They simply just aged up the characters because the director wanted to play Ryle. There literally was no other reason other than he wanted to play one of the characters, and so that's why they aged up everybody. All of the characters who are in their 30s, like mid to late 30s, look like they've already been through life. Like they have experience. They don't give me this vibe of being innocent and naive. They give me this like, I've been through things kind of look, and that's, to me, kind of already messing up the story a little bit. It's just more impactful because Lily is young. She's in her early 20s. Like it's a book about her growing up and like her dealing with like real life shit. And it's just harder to believe that when the character is played by a late 30-year-old woman. I also believe that they could have hired some really young, age-appropriate actors who are maybe not as well known, and this could have really given their career a boost. Considering there's so much attention around this adaptation, I really think it should have went to some less known actors, I guess, or actors that are the same age as the book characters. Most of the time I prefer the movie cover of a book than the original. Example, After in the Summer I Turned Pretty. This is interesting. I've never have heard somebody say this before. I feel like I could take it or leave it. It doesn't really bother me, the whole movie cover situation. Sometimes I like them better, sometimes I don't. It kind of just depends on the cover. I hate when there are kids in romance novels. I roll. I disagree with this one. I think if it's done right, it is so good. Obviously, if it's not done right, like it is annoying and, you know, unnecessary, but I love kids in romance books. I think it's so fun, especially if it's like a single parent. I will say it does have to depend on the book though, for sure. Dark romance should not become mainstream. This one I 100% agree with. Obviously, love dark romance. It has been a while since I've read some dark romance, but I do love the genre and I do support it. However, I don't think it is a subgenre that we should be publicly advertising and like sharing with the world, because people, you know, who are not in the romance community will not understand. But then again, I also feel like people who only read contemporary romance still don't understand dark romance, which is fine. Obviously, if it's not your thing, it's not your thing. But it does bother me when people do shame the subgenre. But also, I feel like it can be really harmful to put it into bookstores in the romance section, where I'm sure a lot of people just think of romance as a very happy, carefree genre, and it can be harmful if, you know, somebody is intrigued by a cover and then they, you know, pick up the book and they read it and it becomes extremely triggering for them. Like, that to me is very worrisome. And obviously I don't want to police what bookstores sell and stuff, but I just do think it's a little scary to like put a dark romance book on a romance shelf and, you know, not expect some sort of repercussion from like just having it available there. Does that make sense? Like, most people who read dark romance are actively searching for the genre, right? Like, you are searching for something dark, you want to read something dark, so you are actively out there looking for that. Whereas somebody who like goes in a bookstore, they're just kind of browsing for the most part, right? Or they're like, oh, I saw this book on TikTok, like, let me buy that. Usually people are not sitting there researching every single book that they're going to buy. And maybe bringing it to light more will make it less taboo, I guess. There is so much that could be critiqued about it, and I feel like it would just end up in some sort of like shaming situation, which I don't like. Not everybody can handle a dark romance, and it shouldn't just be available for anybody to buy. I dislike dual POV romances. That is interesting. I kind of got like another one, I think, like that. While I do read and like dual POV, I actually prefer single POV. I will search for romances that have that. Now that I'm thinking about it, I do actually kind of agree. Sometimes I don't really need to know like what the male character is thinking about. I kind of like the mystery around like what he's feeling and what he's thinking. If it doesn't have a happily ever after, it is not a romance. Obviously, I 100% agree with this. If there is no happily ever after or happy for now, it is not a romance. I didn't love Lucy's score. That is interesting because I've only ever seen good things about Lucy Score and her books, and a lot of her books are now being published by Bloom Books, which is amazing. I read, is it Things We Never Got Over? And I didn't really like it. I think I gave it like 3 stars. I just found the male character so immature and so annoying considering he was like 40 years old. And I also feel like so many things were happening in that book. Like, there were so many different little storylines happening, and it was just kind of all over the place in my opinion. But I would like to know if people liked the second book better in that series. I don't know, because I haven't heard if it's better or not. Enemies to Lovers is oversaturated in my opinion, especially in fantasy romances. I've been noticing it a lot. I definitely agree. I think Enemies to Lovers is a very specific trope that only specific authors can actually write. Most romance books have the enemies to lovers trope, but it literally only lasts like 5 pages. That's not enemies to lovers. Like, the point is that they slowly turn from enemies to lovers. Like, it's slow. It's not supposed to be just like within 5 pages. And I will say that is a common theme in fantasy romances. Like, I am trying to think of any fantasy romance that I've read where they've been like friends to lovers or second chance romance. Like, all of them have been enemies to lovers. I definitely think enemies to lovers is just done. Like, not many people are reaching for that because it's been so overdone. And for the most part, not done very well. I want a series that follows the same couple to make a big comeback. Duology, trilogy, etc. Angst and drama. This I also agree with. I feel like there are not very many like recent releases of books that follow the same couple in like a series. They're all just standalones or like interconnected standalones. That's kind of the big theme nowadays, which is fun, obviously, but I do miss those days where we had a duology or a trilogy or even like a 6-book series that followed one couple. Underlining/writing in books makes them so much more special. I love buying and reading books in which other people have underlined passages or written in, and I usually do it too. I do love annotating. I have recently been really into annotating and I really love that. I do actually have a video coming very soon where I talk about my annotating journey. I do totally agree that it makes a book special and unique and kind of like your own. I actually have never read a book that somebody else has annotated. That is like an experience I've never had before. I do think it would be interesting though to read what somebody else has annotated and written in the book. The smell of books does absolutely nothing for me. I agree. There's like the odd book that I smell that's like, oh, this is a great smell. But for the most part, I don't really like smell my books. Also, I feel like for the longest time I would only read on my Kindle anyway, so it wasn't like I was experiencing the smell of books. I love romance books, but I hate endings where the woman gets pregnant and they have lots of kids. I don't know why, but I hate that ending. I disagree with this, but I totally understand why people hate the traditional ending. It is definitely repetitive. Like, I do feel like a lot of romance books do end that way with marriage and kids and all of that. I totally understand and get it when people like don't like those type of endings, especially people who don't want to get married or don't want to have kids. I can see why it would bother you to see that in a book, because you're like, ugh, again, or like, I don't want to see that. Like, can we have something different? But I love it. I'm a sucker for it. I just think it's fun and cute, and it's, you know, nothing to really take that serious. And I do respect authors who decide to end their books that way or to not include marriage or kids or anything like that. I think either way is fine as long as the book ends up being a very happy ending. And the last one that I have is everybody is talking about how enjoyable Emily Henry books are, but I have read Beach Read and I absolutely hated it. I couldn't even finish it, so I DNF'd it. I don't hate Emily Henry's books, but I definitely do agree that her books are overhyped, or they're mainly just for like a very specific reader. I think for the most part, like hardcore romance readers don't love Emily Henry, because Emily Henry's books follow more of a women's fiction route versus a like romance route. Obviously, you can be like a hardcore romance reader and still love Emily Henry. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that people who have been reading romance for years and years and years don't feel like Emily Henry's books are necessarily like true romance books, because they always have like some sort of other plot going on. Like, a romance book to me personally is where the romance is the main focus of the book. Like, that is the point of the book, and it obviously has a happy ending. That to me is what a romance novel is, and I just don't feel like Emily Henry's books are that, because they always have like much more of a different plot going on. Like, the romance is the subplot, it's not the plot. I read Beach Read, gave it 3 stars. I read Book Lovers, gave it 2 stars. But I also have read her YA stuff, A Million Junes. I gave 4 stars. I loved that book. Like, that book was so good, and I wish she would go back to writing YA. And then I think she also wrote A Love That Split the World, which I didn't really like. I found it super confusing. I think I might have given that 2 or 3 stars, something like that. I don't enjoy Emily Henry either, and I am sure that we are not the only 2 that don't enjoy her books. So those were all of your unpopular bookish opinions. Thank you so much for sending those all in. I really appreciate it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to give this video a like, subscribe, follow me on all my other social media, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!